alternative to Hobson. This isn't done yet, but we can see some similarities and differences between these two theories. First is Hobson and Soames differ in terms of the role of PGO waves. For Hobson, dreaming is basically instigated by PGO waves because there's this correlation between dreaming and REM. And also, Hobson argues that dreams and REM are inextricably intertwined, whereas Soames says they're doubly dissociable, okay? And Hobson implicates different neurotransmitters in dreaming than Soames does. But these two investigators, these two theorists, are similar on a couple of other different dimensions. Both of them think about dreaming as essentially psychotic behavior. Really quite interesting. Soames is explicit about this because it's not tied to reality in any kind of way. Bizarre mental activity, very incoherent. Both of them de-emphasize the importance of dream content. Hobson doesn't care what you dream about because it's just kind of random kind of activity. And it's been noted, this isn't an observation that's original with me, that these two guys are similar in that they really try to want to polarize debate, okay? One's reminded of the remark by Henry Kissinger that academic fights are so vicious because there's so little at stake. And you kind of get this impression in this kind of debate as well. So first Freud, then Hobson, then Soames. It's not over yet because there are other theories of dreams which try to take some of what's known from studies of dream content and turn those into more purely psychological theories of dreams. One of these is associated with the late David Fowlkes, a researcher. You know, I should have done this earlier. There. Okay. Okay. So that Fowlkes agrees with Hobson that dreams arise from spontaneous brain activity, activation of the cortex. But what he argues is that these activations are not random, but rather that these activations connect up with the person's stored memories in various ways. So that whereas in waking state we get the voluntary retrieval of memories, I can ask you to remember what you did last Thursday and you can tell me. In dreaming you get the involuntary retrieval of various kinds of memories. But again, the idea here is that what you dream about really, you're dreaming about things that are related to things that happened to you in the past. Fowlkes was explicit in his argument that dreaming was in fact a form of thinking, okay? Not just random activation of various kinds of images. And he argued that dreaming was a form of thinking that took advantage of the entire brain. He was writing here at the height of the hemispheric specialization fad, so that he identified right hemisphere activity with the spatial thinking, and left hemisphere activity with more logical or syntactical kinds of thinking. But Fowlkes, like Soames, argued that there was no necessary correlation between dreaming and REM. That dreaming could happen at all stages of sleep. We might remember the ones, the dreams that occurred in stage REM better, but in fact, dreaming as a form of thinking occurred throughout the night. One of the most interesting things about Fowlkes' work is that he did a developmental study of dreaming in children, something that really had not been done before and hadn't been done since. And what Fowlkes was able to do was to trace the development of dreaming and tie it to the dominant developmental theory of the time, which was the developmental psychology of Jean Piaget. And he argued that you could see different kinds of dreams occurring at different Piagetian stages. In particular, folks noted that children in what Piaget called the sensory motor period, encompassing the first 2 years of life or so, even when they start talking, you don't get dream reports out of them. And even in the period of concrete operations, up to about age 5 or so, you don't get very much by way of dream reports from children. In fact, it turns out that children have very impoverished dream lives before about age 9, which is kind of interesting. Yeah? It's quite an interesting developmental observation, and one that's entirely inconsistent with Hobson's theory. Okay, because the REM activation is happening to everybody. Everybody ought to have dreams all the time. As soon as you can talk, you ought to be able to talk about them. But little kids just don't do that very well. Okay, there is yet another psychological approach to dreams through dream content that is associated with Bill Domhoff, a professor at UC Santa Cruz, just down the road a piece, who has a different criticism of Hobson's theory, which is that Hobson assumes that dreams are bizarre, psychotic-like mental productions that are very high in affect. That's because of this high level of activation that's characteristic of the dreamer in the aim state space. But go back to that original description of dreams from Solomon Snyder. Most dreams aren't all that bizarre. Most dreams are plausible mental activity. Very rarely do people dream about dragons riding bicycles through the streets of Paris. Most dreams aren't even particularly emotional. So what Domhoff does is look. Here's another assumption that Hobson makes in the activation synthesis model or in the AIM model that just doesn't seem to be right. Sohm says there's a dissociation between dreaming and REM. Domhoff argues that dreams are not nearly as bizarre and emotional as Hobson would suggest. So, to make a long story short, there's not just one scientifically viable theory of dreaming. Okay, the activation synthesis model, the AIM model, is not the only one in town. There are other models of dreaming that deserve people's attention once it actually take the content of dreaming a little bit more seriously. Just as you're going out the door, I'll only say there's one thing about dream research that really strikes me as interesting, which is that rapid eye movement, the discovery of rapid eye movements and the alleged association between dreaming and rapid eye movement sleep had serious deleterious consequences for dream research, which is that everybody got focused on the physiology. As soon as you would have thought, gee, we can finally take something that's purely subjective. What's more subjective than somebody's dream? And relate it to something that's absolutely objective, the occurrence of rapid eye movements. You'd think that would have been a great boon to dream research. It would almost kill dream research because people focused afterwards more on the physiology of dreams than on the psychology of dreams. I'm sorry to keep you late. Go away now. On Wednesday, we'll start talking about the development of consciousness in various aspects. Thank you very much.